There are now over 1.1 million victims of human trafficking in the United States.
The number one issue that we're facing is, where is the trafficking happening? We call it the identification problem. There's this question of like, okay, if it's that big, where is it? I don't see it.
You're walking into your favorite restaurant or your favorite nail salon, and those individuals are experiencing trafficking. And so until we know those signs, evil perpetuates. Systemic blindness. The criminal enterprise of human trafficking thrives because society can't recognize exploitation happening in plain sight.
There's a very specific profile when somebody is controlling another person of how they act with one another.
We talk about these phrases, if you see something, say something. But what if we don't know how to recognize and respond to this in our own local community? I've been working in this field of helping to combat human trafficking or protect vulnerable populations for 25 years now. I felt called to pursue this at 11 when my parents brought into our home one night a woman who said she was being beaten, and she brought with her 3 children. Only the first night they were with us, we realized she was an abuser as well. She left the next morning, and we had 3 children who had experienced really every possible form of trauma and exploitation. At 11, I just couldn't wrap my mind around it because I could not grasp how many people could have seen this, must have seen the signs, and did nothing. I went to my parents and I said, listen, I know why God put me on this planet, and it's to be a lawyer and to solve for this. When the United States first started paying attention to human trafficking, it was in about 2000, 2001. All our laws were aimed at addressing it internationally. We didn't think we had a problem stateside.
We see movies like Sound of Freedom, and we think, wow, human trafficking is in our age, we actually have a problem today. But it's a picture from way overseas. It doesn't feel local to us.
Here in the United States, the overwhelming majority of victims are not from over there. They are our children who are running away from or aging out of our foster care system. They are showing up at your school during the day and being trafficked in the evening. They're showing up at your churches, they're showing up at their soccer games, and they're being trafficked. What I always say is look beyond the surface of what you think you're seeing. So for instance, relationship dynamics that don't seem to make sense. Signs of typical abuse or exploitation or control, that's a huge component really of every trafficking situation, is someone is in control of another person and they can't get out. If you see one sign that you're concerned about, keep looking. If you see 2 signs, make the call. It could save lives. This woman was visiting a nail salon she'd been going to for 2 years, and it was staffed all with young Asian girls. And so she asked the girl who'd been doing her nails for 2 years, how old are you? And the girl said, I'm 18, which is what she'd said 2 years before. And that was red flag number 1. Red flag number 2, she was driving by that nail salon at 11 o'clock on a Friday night after picking up her kids from a school event, and the lights were still on. So there was activity happening at that establishment at an odd time of day. So she made the call. She called local task force, said she'd seen these 2 signs, she had concerns, and it blew open a multi-state human trafficking ring that was trafficking dozens of young Asian women, labor trafficking during the day, and sex trafficking during the night. That is what human trafficking looks like in rural America. It's what it looks like in our cities. And until we understand that, we are never going to intercede on behalf of this if we're waiting for some of those things that we see in the movies to occur. We've got to understand the scope of this. Traffickers globally and here in the United States are making more than your top name any company, several of them combined every single year. The overwhelming majority of numbers of victims are enslaved in labor trafficking, but the overwhelming majority of profits are being driven by sex trafficking, predominantly of women and girls, but also men and boys as well.
So many cases, we're looking at businesses that are running in our city, and they're exploiting the banking system, they're exploiting the hospitality system, they're exploiting the transportation system to run their businesses. And the ways that we've been addressing it is trying to figure out where they are and then running and doing a bust. But it's generally something much more organized, making a lot more money and much more sophisticated. So we need to be able to look at the entirety of the problem and move up several levels and get to who is raking in millions of dollars and who's actually the ultimate beneficial owner of it.
I've always taken the approach that every day you wake up, every person you meet, every need that you see, there are no coincidences for that. So God is trying to lay on your heart a burden, and either you're meant to solve for that in the moment, or perhaps you're supposed to build something to solve for the bigger issues. So I launched a global nonprofit called the Alliance, and we supported about 25,000 anti-trafficking efforts around the globe in the span of a decade. In 2019, I realized that several of the solutions we'd built, tech-enabled solutions that needed to scale to literally everywhere where trafficking occurred, we're never going to do that in a nonprofit skin. So I launched a benefit corporation to leverage impact investments in order to scale the tech and the team and our reach.
So often people are kind of asking, like, how do you deal with the tension between profit and impact? And Ashleigh's a beautiful example of, if you can get your mission right at the core of what you're paid to do, you basically eliminate the tension.
The issue of human trafficking is fairly well understood. People know that it exists in the world. They know what that phrase means. They do not yet know how to see it.
What we're finding through Ashleigh's work is actually that the ability to identify is a step change in the fight against trafficking. And part of that is that frontline doctors and nurses have a unique ability to see what's right in front of them.
Justice U, which is our online university for justice advocates, is now actively training frontline professionals in over 50 different roles in all 50 states and 8 countries. We've trained over 6,000 doctors and nurses and hospital caseworkers. That's about to explode.
Many people might be excited by what Justice University is doing, but they might not realize it's also a great business. So the continuing education market is about $64 billion per year, and more the healthcare industry, kind of state by state and different elements of it, are mandating that there needs to be counter-trafficking training.
We're partnering with universities, healthcare associations, foster care insurance companies. Every single time we deploy this training, people begin to identify cases. When we think about human trafficking, I know a lot of people, and I speak on this all the time, just feel very overwhelmed. They feel overwhelmed by the horrific nature of these crimes. They feel completely overwhelmed by the size of it. And so the reaction is to close my eyes and shut my ears and step away and look elsewhere, when that's not the solution at all. And so if we see something that is breaking our heart, I'm just convinced it's God who's illuminating that for you, and you have a choice. It is not enough to be generally aware that human trafficking exists in the world. We have to know how to see it and what to do when we see it. Darkness never gets to win, not when light shows up, and that is an inevitability. We just need more light.